Hi, everybody. Welcome to Inside Scoop with Sue. Today, I am personally really excited to have this conversation. We are talking to John Sovek, and he is at John Sovek Therapy. You can look at that and see that. John is a therapist, a coach, a counselor, and a nationally recognized expert on the coming out process for teens. And you work with the teens and the parents, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because coming out, it is a family process.
Okay, so I know that personally. And so this conversation comes from a place that I really want the answers for everyone to know, but also having gone through it, I know how incredibly challenging it is to do this well. So my first question is, are we supposed to let our kids decide for themselves how they come out and when they come out?
Well, if you consider that this for many kids is one of the biggest steps that they will take in their young lives, absolutely, we need to follow their lead on it. There's a lot of processing that's going to be in place for them. They're going to spend a lot of time looking inside, kind of weighing out, who they are, how they want to be in the world. They're going to be, maybe testing that out a little bit. And then eventually they're going to hit this place. And no matter how affirming a family is, it is one of the most anxiety producing experiences for any LGBTQ kid. They're going to reach this space where they need to speak it out loud. And that's going to be a really, really, excuse me, challenging moment for them. Almost had to sneeze there, but got around it.
It's COVID now. We allow sneezing on Zoom.
Oh, there you go. But yeah, it's a really scary moment. I mean, I remember in my own coming out process, that moment of I knew my parents were going to be fine with it. I knew my friends were going to be fine with it. But as I was getting ready to say those words out loud, my heart was beating so fast. I was sweating. I was cold. I was hot all at the same time, because it is a very traumatic experience to actually speak it out loud and share that piece of my identity with the rest of the world.
Okay, so we're going to get back to that a little bit later. But what I want to talk about now is, these hard and fast rules don't always work well. So is there ever a time, like you see your kid is depressed, you have a gut suspicion that they might be gay and that it might be tied together? Are there things we can say as parents like, hey, I just want to put out there, whoever you are, we love you. Is that helpful? Are there ways to kind of inch them toward more comfort?
Well, I think the idea of, yes, putting out that idea of, whatever your identity is, whoever you are, that this is a house where you are surrounded by love and support. Putting that out as a very direct message is setting up an invitation for them to come out. They may not take it, and I think it's important for a parent not to push at that moment. But there are actually other more subtle things that you can do that can be part of a process of letting your kid know they're going to be okay if they come out in your family. Most kids from a very young age notice what the family's attitude is. If there's a program with a gay character and you quickly switch past it, or there's some joke about like Harry Styles and how he's appearing on the cover of Vogue magazine, that when there are little subtle things like that, kids are going to feel a little bit more anxious. But if we create an environment where these conversations are welcome, on gender, on sexual orientation, that there's suddenly, oh, this language exists in my family, so it is going to be okay when I choose to talk about it. So yes, there's the overt, if there's something you need to tell us, we are here, we are loving, supportive. And then there's the more subtle covert side, which is simply how we as a family speak about, the transgender community, how we speak about sexual orientation, and that sets up an environment for your kid.
How about even how we talk about dating? Like, should we be talking about dating in a gender neutral way? Like, have you met anybody you like, and not have you met a woman or a man in particular, like more general?
I absolutely agree with that. It's fascinating because of my work, in the public eye and doing a lot of speaking and working with clients. I've really adjusted my regular speaking language to be very gender neutral. I think it can create a really exciting, incubator for people to be able to talk more deeply about sexual orientation and gender identity by keeping that neutrality in how I address a room. So by doing that, you could create, are you dating someone? Is there anyone you're interested in? creates a much more fertile position for someone to say, well, yeah, there's this person I'm interested in, and they happen to be the same gender that I am. It opens up a little bit more space for that versus that, so have you found yourself a girl, type thing.
Right.
And I remember grandparents, just like my grandma was Croatian. She, oh, Johnny, did you find yourself a nice girl? And it was just like, no, I haven't. And here's why. But those are those pieces of the puzzle that we can do to create a more affirming environment.
Especially our kids are so fluid about the whole conversation. So that even allows for someone who may not be sure if they're trans or if they just want to be a they, like all these things that for someone my age is kind of like, I think there's a temptation to roll your eyes and then the temptation goes away and you feel like I better get on board with this, but it's not natural. And for our kids, it's entirely effortless for them to call a person they.
Well,
So
here's the thing. It actually is more natural than you know. Because I want to address the they thing because it comes up often in conversations that I have, is that the Oxford English Dictionary and Merriam-Webster's all consider they, them a singular pronoun. So we've got it from the biggest authorities that are out there. But I want to tell you that you actually do it already and you have most of your life. Let's say you walked into the kitchen and someone left a coffee cup on the counter. You would say, oh, I wonder whose coffee cup that is. I wonder if they're going to come back and get it. Do you think they left it here for me to clean up? I'm not going to clean up their coffee cup. You've used it already. And I
that's so
think that
true.
understanding that the awkwardness is when we're asked to address someone in a way that we're not used to addressing them. That's actually the awkwardness. We have the facility to use the language. We just have to ease ourselves up into it. And the other thing too that I actually think is exciting, I think it's beautiful and powerful that kids are questioning this binary, that they're saying that there is fluidity, that I'm not just male or female, gay or straight, but there is all this movement and all this discovery. For me personally, I think it's an amazing, amazing time. And I think it creates space for us, maybe as adults in their world, to sit back and actually listen to some of the questions they're asking as a means to inspire a little bit of internal process for ourselves.
I think it goes both ways though. Like kids can be very black and white about like the way it's supposed to be. And so in my house, you can get jumped on for asking the wrong question. And we had to work on like, I'm actually trying to grow in this area and I'm going to ask it incorrectly because it's not natural for me. So it does work both ways. It's a little scary to go into that territory with your kids if you want to follow up with a question. Okay, I hear what you're saying, but and then you're dead. You're like,
Yeah.
you're oh my God. Oh my God. That's that's the eye roll. Okay, so I have some questions that I think we want to know as parents, and it's hard to get it from the source. So from a kid's perspective, when they come out, what are they praying their parents will say to them?
What they're asking for most, what they need most, what I remember wanting most in my coming out process is simply for you to look in their eyes, say, I love you, and then hug them. You have to understand that their system at that moment is so hyperstimulated. They're so anxious that the simple contact of you opening your arms, hugging them, saying you love them, and then gently rubbing their back while they're crying on your shoulder. Remember, the tears aren't always of pain. They're of the anxiety. They're the stress of the moment. That is actually the most perfect thing that you can offer your child. There's no other fancy words, no other fancy affirming things that you need to do in that moment. It is simply about being present and offering your heart to them.
I love that so much because the scary part is getting the words right, and you don't need so many.
Use less. I love you. Open your arms, hug them, rub their back, and you will have started the most beautiful connection in the journey of their coming out process.
Even if your heart is breaking, even if like you are caught off guard, you can pull that out. That can be those words can come out and you can do that. That's amazing. Okay, so now from the kids' perspective, we know what they want us to say. What do we often say that we get wrong?
Okay. So this is my mission in the world, and I will share it with you. We often hear people say, parents say, oh, I accept you. Now, I want you to think about that word. If I accept you, that often carries with it, there's something damaged here, but I'm going to overlook that and still be okay with you. So this acceptance word is interesting as it sounds so positive, but at the same time, it sends out this really mixed message. And then I think it's about right in that moment when you're in this big emotional experience with them is don't interrogate them. Don't start asking the why questions. Well, why are you gay? When did you know? How did you, are you, that those questions actually aren't important at that initial moment. And what I encourage people to do is maybe later on to keep the conversation going. Because oftentimes in families, what will happen is the kid will come out and it's like, okay, we love you. And then radio silence and nobody continues to talk about it. You have to understand this is a process for everybody, not just the kid, but for the family as well. And they're going to want you to be present with them. Maybe not interrogate them, but be curious, be present, and open up more conversations as the days, weeks, months, and years go by.
That is so hard because it's really different for every kid on what they're looking for. And like, so you do your best. You handle the first one well because you heard John and he says, hug them. I love you. No caveats. And you move on. And then you get the next day wrong.
Mhm.
So is there, I think from older people who talk about it, they're so scarred from their parents getting it wrong that it can be very paralyzing to try to get it right and worry that you're really going to scar your kid. Is there room for getting it wrong and still apologizing and overcoming that without it being long term?
Absolutely. There's a therapist who quite a few years ago put out a concept we call good enough parenting. And I talk to a lot of parents about this because the idea is from the moment your baby is born, you have scarred your baby for life. And our parents scarred us and their parents scarred them. But guess what? They did good enough. And here you and I are talking about this really valuable subject. I think people get so afraid of messing it up or quote unquote scarring their kids that they aren't bringing their like naturalness to the moment. So the first steps that I think for most parents is find parent support. Look at joining a local group, getting a therapist for yourself, doing a little reading on some of the more supportive sites, talking to your spouse or partner, getting your support there. So then when you come back to your kid, you're not looking for your kid to educate you. You're coming back a little bit more educated with your experience, your feelings, your questions already starting to be answered, and you just become present with them. Because here's the deal, whether your kid is gay or straight, cisgender, transgender, you are going to mess up with them and they're going to roll their eyes at you and not talk to you for 2 days. It really doesn't matter what parent you are. And it's about how we move through that. It's about knowing that we're going to have these disagreements, we're going to have these awkward moments, and I still love you. And I know you love me, even though you're rolling your eyes at me. And being able to be present with that and
I
not
think
making it such a big deal that it turns into a bigger fight when you're trying to go into this corrective phase.
so. When your baby is born, open a 529 account for college and open another account for therapy.
Absolutely.
Okay, so I actually did that, not just because I remember seeing a guy speaking who was openly gay and his parents listening to him in the front row with like such pride. And I asked him to meet with me because I wanted to know, like, I mean, it's such a weird thing to say, but I wanted to be a good mother of a gay kid and I didn't know what that looked like. And the irony is it turns out to look exactly the same way as being a good parent of a straight kid, but I needed to like talk to somebody. His advice was life changing, like what mattered to him. So how does a parent start that conversation? Like, would you, I mean, you're out in the public eye, but like, do you think people should feel comfortable to reach out to somebody that they know in the LGBTQ community and ask if they would have coffee? How does that happen?
Actually, it's funny because I think the first place that I encourage parents to start is with other parents who are going through this same experience. There are a lot of groups in the community. There's PFLAG, which is parents and friends of lesbians and gays. And yes, they are very affirming for the transgender story as well, but they know it's not in their title. Very supportive place for parents to talk with each other. And what I think what's so powerful about the group experience for parents is they're parents who are behind you on the journey, at the same place you're on the journey, parents who are ahead of you on the journey of being present with their kids who are coming out. And when you get that kind of support, then you get to really dig in and you get to understand like all of the parts of the journey and what it's going to feel like. I remember there's a really incredible moment that I had with my mom where my older brother was having some trouble dating, and we kept talking about his dating and kept talking about his dating every time we were on the phone together. And one day I said, Mom, I think it's so weird. You never asked me, your gay son, about my dating. And she paused and she was like, that is really weird. And I don't feel I have the language to be able to talk to you about that.
Wow.
And that's where a group of parents could say, like, no, what you do is you do ask them the same type of questions. You do have the same inquiries. You do set the same types of curfews and stuff like that. But she didn't know how. So I had to educate her. And that's where an iffy thing about your question comes into play. If you call me, absolutely, you and I can chat for hours and I will give you all of my experience and all of my knowledge about being a queer man in this world. There are other people who are not going to feel comfortable taking on the mantle of education. So if you're going to do a reach out, be gentle with it, be delicate with it, be kind with it, maybe be honest with it. You know, hey, my kid just came out and I'm having a lot of concerns and worries. I'd love to take you out to coffee and just learn more about your experience. And give them the ability to say yes or no, but don't have to turn them into your next professor on LGBTQ studies.
Unless you're lucky enough to have somebody you know is like he was so excited to do it. But yeah, that is really good advice. I just want to share Charity's comment because it's so beautiful. Charity says, yes, it looks exactly the same. We don't talk about having issues about kids coming out straight, which is so entirely true. And hopefully we're getting there where it is not a big announcement. It just is like who you bring home that day. Anyway, if there's any questions, please put them in here. Do you have any parting words for us, John?
Well, I guess the thing that I would suggest is love your children equally. Find ways to be present with them in their world, to acknowledge your own discomfort when it shows up, to make sure that you're getting the support that you need. But the biggest thing we can do to support LGBTQ kids in this process of coming out is to simply love them from the depths of our hearts.
That is really a perfect way to end and such a beautiful thought. John Sovik, thank you for what you do. Thank you for being here with us. We really appreciate your wise words. Thanks so much.
Thank you.